Welcome back to the Becoming Shameless podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Wallace. This is my guest.
What's going on? I'm Damo.
Today, this is not even going to be a type of where we have everything mapped out. We're just going to talk about a general concept and have a real conversation, like a real life conversation.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I think that something we need to discuss again is vulnerability, especially for men, bro.
Yeah.
I think in this phase of my life, I'll be honest and I'll be vulnerable. That's the lesson I'm learning is true vulnerability, what it means and the importance of it. Because I don't think we really touch in life as men how important it is to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And as a Christian podcast, the opposite of pride is humility, and to be humble is to be vulnerable. Because
Exactly.
God can't use pride; He only can use humility. What you think?
Um. First, I just want to thank you for having me here, brother.
Anytime.
I'm so gracious that Nick chose me to be the person to speak about this with, and to co-host and help him and pretty much follow his lead on the situation. Mainly because I started I believe I would love to say that I started this journey with Nick as far as trying to understand who I am as a person. We both would just communicate with each other and call each other and try to make sense of life together. And now we've gotten to a platform where we're able to speak to y'all and we're able to give y'all information and our insight and real life knowledge from guys who started at literally ground zero. Like ground zero. We started right
Just
there.
ignorant.
So, exactly. Ignorant. Literally. So the fact that we're here and we're able to speak about these things and we're able to articulate it to where hopefully somebody on ground zero can understand is beautiful, and it's a true blessing. It's a true blessing.
And I like how you brought it. We started from ground zero. And I think as we speak about vulnerability, like what does that look like? And I think that's where a lot of people are still at because at ground zero comes with acknowledgement and pain.
Yeah. You have to acknowledge that you're lost, and to kick it off, I also grabbed a screenshot off Google because a lot of things they need to be defined, and
Yeah.
so we
Talk
don't
to me.
ever want you to mistake vulnerability with weakness, because the definition of weakness is not the same definition of vulnerability. The definition of weakness is the state or condition of lacking strength. That has no add-on or is not even in the same playing field as what it is to be a vulnerable man. Like, it does not mean you have the lack of strength. It does not mean you're weak. It does not mean anything. So,
And not just that, right? Because as a Christian pod, Jesus on the cross was vulnerable, but him being God, he didn't lack the strength.
exactly.
He left himself open to attack. There's a difference.
Exactly.
And vulnerability is just leaving yourself open to, you know what I'm saying? When you're vulnerable, you can get hurt, but I could punch a boxer in the face. Don't mean he's weak.
Does not mean
He
he's
just
weak.
left
He will
himself
feel
open.
that pain. He will feel that
He
pain.
will feel the pain.
So we don't ever want you guys on ground zero or someone who's in the midst of their journey or trying to follow their road into a better life. We don't ever want you to mistake that, because it is crucial that you understand the definition of the words that you're using to define yourself and applicable to who you are. You don't ever want to mistake a word for the definition, because that's when you become a lost person and you're not speaking with the utmost knowledge.
Facts. And in regards to pain, I think a lot of times, like society in the world, most people are avoiding their pains. That's why we have different vices, whether it be drinking, smoking.
Agreed.
We're always searching for a distraction. The thing about pain is, though, you can't avoid it.
Cannot.
When you try to avoid pain, you inflict it on others. When you're not being vulnerable, what you're going to do is you're going to push people away who actually care about you. And in turn, you're going to bring pain to them. Pain is something you will never be able to avoid. So I think it's better to maneuver through pain than avoid it. Because when you avoid it and you have that tunnel vision, you're not checking for other people. So you're not even realizing you're causing collateral damage because you're trying to protect yourself. It's kind of like, I used to play sports. If you're so focused on not dropping the ball, you're going to drop the ball.
Yeah.
And that's how it is with pain. We're so focused on not trying to feel pain, you're going to inflict it on somebody else, and it affects everybody. I don't think people realize, like, in this life, you're always planting a seed. and it doesn't just affect you. So even in your goal to avoid pain, there's other people in your life. So how you treat others has more to do with you than them, but they're gonna be affected by your actions.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people realize so many people their whole lives try to avoid pain, and that's how a lot of generational curses and traumas and all that stuff is passed down, all because your goal of avoiding. Like you have people who have parents who are alcoholics because they never want to deal with their traumas. They didn't want to deal with their pain.
No, no way.
And since in their goal to avoid it, they inflicted that trauma right on their kids, on their spouse. They abuse somebody. So you can't really avoid it. You have to actually deal with it.
So, I truly think that we can give you guys at least a 3-step method to truly understand how to become vulnerable and how to truly achieve even a slight piece of vulnerability within yourself. And I truly believe one of the first steps, if not the first step, is attacking what you would like to say is your traumatic experiences in life. If you do not acknowledge those and you do not understand, and sometimes it may not come with full understanding, right? And I truly understand that because sometimes it's not in a person's position to understand what happened to them and why. Yeah. I get that in life. Sometimes you just put in a situation and it's almost like you're in the eye of a storm and you don't really know why you're in the middle of that storm. I get it. But it's vital for you to get to that point and say, okay, I lived through this and understand all the variables in the situation so you can then in turn become vulnerable. Like it's not like if you still have traumatic experiences in your heart and in your mind, then it will block you from truly being vulnerable because that'll always be your crutch to be strong. And we all know that strong people don't need crutches. You know, they can walk on their own 2 feet and they can move however they want to in life because they're considered themselves free of their past, free of their traumatic experiences, free of the things that have happened to them and the wrongdoings that have happened to them.
Real spill, I think, like in addition to that first, like the knowing of what the issue is, where the trauma is. Because I think in order to go anywhere, you have to know where you're going. But to know where you're going, you have to know where you are.
Exactly.
Know where to start.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of people, in social media, technology, it's all a great thing. But I think a lot of times we're distracted. We're too distracted, and it's so easy to escapism. That's the word. We're surrounded by escapism, so you're not even having to focus on where you are. I think in order to know where you are and know your stuff, sit.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to be still.
Yeah.
I think that's why a lot of people, they're always doing something. They're hyperactive because they don't want to have to sit. Because once you sit, those thoughts that you try to run from, you can't.
Yeah.
So in order to, in addition to this first step, you have to actually sit to even do that. Be still.
And most of the times, people, that comes from what you would like to call as the devil knocking you down. You feel as if something so wrong just happened to you that you just can't proceed the way you were moving before the situation happened. And sometimes you would love to say, oh yeah, no, the devil knocked me off my horse. Sometimes that'll be that. Sometimes that is the exact call from Jesus that he made from himself to say, hey, you thought you were so unmovable. I'm going to move you now. I'm going to move you and make you address the things that you never wanted to address. I'm going to make you see the things that you never wanted to see. I'm going to make you understand the things. I'm going to make you think about and understand the things that you never even thought about or never cared to understand. And that's just how life goes sometimes. We move with so much I want to say how can you say you're moving with like so much intentions to just further yourself without having the following of God and following of Jesus Christ himself.
And the thing about it is, right, in life you have to hit rock. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to realize who's the rock at the bottom, who's holding you up, and the foundation is God. Exactly. And I think after you know what your problem is, I don't know if that's what his second step is, but you have to acknowledge that you can't do it alone. You have to give that control. Surrender.
Yeah.
You really have to surrender.
Well, no, we're coming up with the steps together, bro. We know how to navigate from ground zero. I can't give you 5 steps on how to reach peace. I can't do that. That's not my calling. I don't know how to do that type of stuff. What I can do is I can share the things that me and you learn together, and and we can try to piece
it together.
We can piece some type of plan for someone who doesn't understand and doesn't know how.
So like, let's bring it back to the knowing, right? I think a part of knowing the traumas, you need to know where you are, and to know where you are too. You have to accept the falsehoods about yourself. Know you're living a facade, and you might believe that you are who you are, and you're content with everything you have about yourself. You're not.
You're not.
Who you think you are is not who you are. You have to realize you're living a facade. Because I don't think people realize how much we mask stuff about ourselves, and we don't realize the root of why we're doing stuff. Like, I'll be honest. Last week, this is me being honest. Like, last week, I realized sometimes I'll be like, you know what? I'm around people who don't deserve my time, my energy, all this other stuff. And I didn't realize my pride was causing me to chase people in situations to prove myself. And my whole time, and most people, they'll be like, oh, I'm a good person, I'm just forgiving, I'm understanding. No, it's not that. It's my pride making me do that. It's not my caring nature. It's my pride.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of things mask themselves. And that's why I believe, like I always tell bro, like, I don't believe in the concept of good people. I think only God's good. Because I think a lot of stuff we think that we're doing as good, it's a reason behind why you're doing it. And even if it is good, you should do good stuff. But at the same time, a lot of stuff you mask. Like, people who are nice or people pleasers, they just lack boundaries a lot of times. So you have to be real with yourself. Is it the fact that I'm a good person, or do I just lack boundaries? Like, you know what I'm saying? I think that's a part of knowing your trauma. So, like, if you lack boundaries, you can go back in your brain and be like, you know, when I was a little kid, I was, you know what I'm saying, no one ever respected my boundaries, and people never listened to me. So that's where my lack of boundaries stems from. I think in knowing yourself, you have to really do the digging. I think to get to the root of your problems, you have to do the digging. But you can't get lazy, because digging is a lot of labor work.
It is. It's hard work. It's hard work. And just to touch bases on what you said about how you thought about what you said about your about you having your pride and still having that connection with certain people. I had to come to terms with, and this was one of my biggest like hurdles as far as becoming a vulnerable man. I had to get to the root of my parents. Like, I grew up in a single mother household. My father wasn't around. He obviously was custody. We see him on every other weekend, stuff like that. But I am 24 today, and I just told my friends literally a few days ago, I have 0 pictures with my mom and my father on the side of me. I'm a 24-year-old male. If I died tomorrow, I would never have a picture with either of my parents in that. So, with that being said, and as much as it hurts to acknowledge that, it gets to a point where you have to acknowledge it. Like, if you think to yourself, like, man, maybe somewhere along the line I did start to slip and start to blame certain things on my mom or blame certain things on my dad. You have to understand, man, they're people. Like, everyone makes mistakes, and just as much as I hated to think about all of that stuff, at some point when my mother came home from work and I was in the house, I had to look that woman straight in her face and say, without even her knowing, I had to look her straight in her face and think to myself, you know what, I forgive her. Because she's living her life. She just got up. She don't even know I'm sitting here low-key resenting some of the decisions that could have been made in my early childhood life and stuff like that. But it gets to a point where you have to sit there and be like, you know what, I forgive you and I love you. Because if not, you're going to continuously look at that person. You're going to continuously have like steam in your heart. And it's never going to allow you to get to the place where you need to be. Especially when we're talking about vulnerable, because now it's like me and my mom can have conversations. We could talk about certain things. And sure, maybe I may never get that picture at heart that I want with both my parents. It may not ever happen. But at least I can sit here and say, you know what? I acknowledged it, and it's not something I pursue anymore. But you know, you see your friends and you see people around you, and they'll come from 2-parent households, and the parents will show up to the graduations and birthdays. Unfortunately, that wasn't my card that I was able to draw in my life. So, you know, it just comes with being able to understand certain things, and that doesn't necessarily mean I'm a broken person. I don't feel even the slightest bit of broken. What I feel like is I'm a person that needs to continue to chase the light and go down the journey that God put me on, and that's fair and square. I don't feel broken, not even a little bit.
Facts. And in knowing yourself, you must know you aren't any less based on anything that happens to you. No. And I think that's why a lot of people, they don't want to be vulnerable, because it makes them feel weak, or they feel less than when bad things happen. And it's like, bad things happen to you 9 out of 10 has something to do with you. You are collateral damage to someone else's pain. And that's what I'm saying. Most things in life, it's just collateral damage to someone else's pain. And when you realize that, it helps you forgive others. Like, I have Luke 23, verse 34 tatted on my chest. And Jesus said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." When they part his garments, casting lots. Because even when Jesus was getting stabbed on the cross, and they tried to kill him, he's like, "Forgive them. They don't know what they do." People don't really know, and a lot of times, the pain that we're trying to avoid, you can't avoid it because you know why? It was never intentional.
Nope.
Most pain is, even pain that is intended to be inflicted on people, the severity is never intended to be that harsh. Because people don't know why they're doing it. When you're trying so hard to avoid it, you're gonna mess up and you're gonna hurt others. You gotta just accept who you are, where you are, and the truth about yourself, and then surrender it. Like, you know what? This is what I want. This is who I think I am. This is who I am. I surrender it to God. What is my identity?
That is step one, and that is step two right there. It's the acknowledgement and the surrenderment. Because without those two steps, then step three would not even be possible, or not even be merely achievable. And that's just simply trying to follow the voice of God. It's in every single one of us, I would like to believe.
We all got it.
And it's all about how you give your ear to it. You know, some people, and that does not necessarily mean once you complete step 1 and step 2 that you'll instantly want to
it's a process.
Yeah, you'll instantly want to start to follow the word of God, and you'll want to be like encouraged by some of the things that you see and hear and read in the Bible. But it just simply means that you're ready to learn. Like, it's literally like a bringing a notebook and pencil to class. Like, if you go to class without a pencil and notepad, you're not really coming there to learn.
You're not gonna retain it either.
Not at all. Not at all. So you have to, there's two first steps of acknowledging who you are and your problems, and then also releasing all of that, and releasing the thought and the mindset of, hey, I control my problems so well, no one knows I have problems. That is one of the biggest downfalls of truly, that is one of the biggest downfalls of men and women. Like, I truly feel like it's even within both of them, because men like to live this facade that their life, that the things they live through, as long as they have not killed them, that they're perfectly fine. And that is one of the biggest lies we tell ourselves. And same with women. Women love to hide their past and hide their past traumas. And then once you finally communicate to them, or once they finally open up, that's when you'll figure out that all these things have happened to them in chronological order, and that they're just hiding all of this. And it's like, okay, well, I know that you're holding on to your traumas by the way you speak on them. Like, I can tell you're not healed by the way you talk about your problems, because you sound like a victim. You don't sound like you've overcame the situation. You don't sound like you've understood the situation. You don't sound like you forgave in the situation. You're speaking to this as if they just hurt you yesterday, and you're talking about things that happened almost decades ago, 10 years ago. So I know Nick agrees with this, and I know I completely understand this. The way you talk about your past experiences and your traumas lets me know where you are in them.
You tell on yourself. I think
exactly. You literally tell on yourself.
How you speak, you always reveal stuff. Even a fool is believed to be wise when they don't speak. And I think, like, people, how they talk about the stuff they experience, they don't realize who you trying to convince that you're over it, me or yourself.
Exactly.
And I think that's because a lot of times people don't, and this comes with vulnerability, feelings are meant to be felt.
Literally.
Men, especially, but men and women, feelings are meant to be felt. It doesn't make you less of a man for you actually feeling how you feel. You being hurt doesn't mean you're less of a man or you're sensitive. It just, guess what? It means you're a human. You're functioning properly.
Mm-hmm.
You have emotions. Even God himself has feelings. What makes it feel that you can't express how you feel?
Exactly.
And I think the problem with a lot of people when it comes to vulnerability is they tie their vulnerability to outcome. If I'm vulnerable and I don't receive this, there's no point of being vulnerable. No. Being vulnerable is a freeing thing. It's not even, you shouldn't be vulnerable to receive. Mm-hmm. If you're being vulnerable to receive, then you're not being vulnerable for the right reasons. Be vulnerable to be. And I'll say to be as in be yourself. Free yourself from the shackles of hiding who you truly are, because at the end of the day, if you try to numb yourself to pain, no matter what, once the numbness wears off, you're still going to feel the after effects. You can't avoid it. Free yourself. Feelings are meant to be felt.
Y'all love that Fantasia track. Y'all love it. Y'all love it. But we not talking about what she talking about. She says in the song, "If you don't want me, then don't talk to me." But I truly believe that alone is not the type of free yourself we sitting here talking about.
Sure, free yourself. I'm talking about if I want you, I'm gonna talk to you.
I'm gonna talk to you.
Let me free myself to talk to you. Because I think
exactly.
if you're tying what you say to others based on an outcome, you're only limiting yourself. Because at the end of the day, one, it's manipulative. Let's be real. Because I'm only saying certain things to sway you to get what I want. That's not being a genuine person. Right. And you can't say you're a good person if you're doing that. Being vulnerable and saying, I want this, and you still not receiving it, takes nothing away from you. If anything, it's a redirection that wasn't for you. But you got to stop taking it as there's something wrong with me. So, you know what? I don't want to feel bad. So, I'm going to avoid rejection. I'm just not going to say nothing. No, you can't avoid rejection. Because even then, if you don't ever ask, you still got to know.
Still have to know.
So, it's like, I think you have to free yourself. You owe it to yourself to at least be yourself. Because a lot of people live this whole life, but they never lived it themselves. They lived as another character.
Yeah, I truly don't even think that. So, I feel as if whenever you're in that process of not knowing who you are is when you are the most afraid to die. And I say that because you'll sit there and think like, man, dying is such this scary experience, you know, like you're not in the living presence anymore. You don't get to do XYZ and you don't get to live through all of these different experiences. But when you truly know who you are, like you could be like, you know what, bruh, if this all ends today, like at least my journey to finding who I was efficient to even where I'm 24 now, and I would be more than willing to be like, you know what, I know who I was at the end of my life. Like I can't sit here and be like, man, I showed the entire world this version of me, and there was a whole different version of me inside and in my heart that I kept away from the world. Like I literally like exposed to who my spirit was to the world, so that way I could never be judged. You cannot use anything in my life against me, because I'm willing to take the stand for any of my actions and anything that I've been through in life and say, yes, that was me. I'm that person. I lived through that experience. I may not be that person now. That's the beautiful thing about growth. That's the beautiful thing about...
I can look back and I'll be a whole different person.
You know?
And especially in Christ, you're literally, it says in the Bible, you're a whole new creation. And I think, you know what I'm saying, be yourself. Like, you're not... By you trying to hold back who you truly are and avoid vulnerability, you're not even... You think you're doing something for yourself. Really, you're punishing yourself.
You are.
When you're not being authentically yourself and being vulnerable, you're just putting yourself in a prison. And then it's crazy because it's a prison that you'll blame everybody else for, but you have the key to get out, but you won't free yourself. Mm-hmm. You have to free yourself and be vulnerable, because at the end of the day, no one's ever going to see you locked away in that tower when you have the key to get out.
Yeah.
Get yourself out.
You're not even truly ready to depart from this world until you know who you are. Like, it's not even like your ticket isn't even written. It's not printed out, and you haven't even paid for it until you started this process of getting off ground zero, understanding and acknowledging your traumas, releasing the controller that you think that you have in your hand, releasing it, dropping it, and just living life and saying, you know what?
God your hands.
Exactly. Period.
Because at the end of the day, like, you doing this fight to control everything and control your perception, control all these things, you're going to be overwhelmed. And a lot of the stress you face is self-inflicted. At least as in the Bible, God gave us a spirit. He didn't give us a spirit of fear and anxiety, but of power, love, and sound mind. That need for control, you're only complicating it yourself because you won't give up the sticks. Hand the controller over, bro. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to hold the controller and it's like, it's not in your hands. Even then, once you realize perception of you isn't even in your own hands. How he views me is based on his experiences. I could say something and based on his traumas, he perceived what I say completely different than how I intended it. And it's not even always I said or did anything wrong. It's just their perception. I can't control that. And when you relinquish the control, not only submit to God, then you realize a lot of things that you are afraid of, no one cares about, and it's out of your control. Give it up and you can free yourself. Yeah. Like a lot of people, you want to try these new talents. You want to go out. You want to try this, join this club, join this team. But you're afraid of what people are going to think. You're afraid to be vulnerable and being yourself. But in reality, you're going to, no matter what, as years go by, you're going to still be the same age. Your age, time's going to go by and you never did it. All because you're afraid of what they're going to think and they probably don't care.
And they're living the life. They're doing the parts that you wish you had the courage to do.
I'll be real honest. when I was in high school, I was very judgmental. Like, I used to be like, man, they're lame,
Yeah,
they're all this thing. And I remember I told my friend about this last week. There's this one dude, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna say his name. I thought he was so lame, bro. He was so corny. Until one day I'm sitting to myself, like, I'm by myself, it's like late. And I'm like, I think he's so lame. But then I thought to myself, but he's having all the fun that I wish I was having.
No.
Even though I don't like I don't like how he's doing it. It might be a little corny to me, but he's being himself and he's having fun. No matter how much people say he's lame, he's free. It's truly freeing to be yourself, bro.
Truly.
Because at the end of the day, the people that you're worried about, they do not live with you. 9 out of 10, you're not on their mind. And at the end of the day, if you do feel pain or they do hurt you, it's not even a you problem. It's a them problem. Yeah. Free yourself. As a man, you not expressing what hurts your feelings. That's the let's go there, because man, that's the main problem with a lot of people. Men, express what hurts your feelings, bro.
I as much as we can get into that, they can't express it until they're able to articulate it. And to articulate, you have to have some type of understanding about who you are. Because if you don't understand who you are and you try to articulate how someone just hurt you, it's gonna come out tied up. We both know that.
But you know what I think too? I call it the brainstorm. Remember when we was in English, like in high school, you used to be English, they'd be like, put a random sheet of paper on the table, and before you write an essay, they'd be like, write anything that comes to mind, brainstorm. I think you can never learn how to articulate it unless you try or start. You have to start from somewhere. Even if you don't know how to articulate how you feel, try. Like my friends around me, I don't care. If you don't know how to articulate it, say something. Because eventually, no matter if you might say the wrong thing at first, eventually how you really feel will come out.
Yeah.
You owe to at least try. And I think, men, express how you feel, because you're convinced the world don't care about how you feel, but no one can care about how you feel until you care. No one can care about how you feel until you do, because you teach people how to treat you. If you teach people it's okay to dismiss how you feel and dismiss your thoughts, the whole world will. If I never speak out and advocate for myself, you can't expect the world to advocate for you. And you owe it to yourself to be honest, because you have feelings, bro. And there's nothing wrong with having them, because you are a human. You're not less of a man. The truest measure of strength for a man is vulnerability. Any man who is vulnerable is a strong man. You know why? Because a man who is vulnerable is secure in himself.
Yeah, and he fears no judgment.
He fears no judgment.
He fears not even a single bit of judgment. Because he knows that your judgment is worth absolutely nothing. God
came down and was on a cross. What's he saying in the Bible? He was like, he could have had legions of angels come down if he wanted to at a whim. He is God. Came down, but left himself vulnerable because he's secure that he is God. When you are secure as a man in yourself, the opinions of people will not bother you, and it's such a freeing thing. And this point in life, that's where I'm at, where I'm freeing myself. I'm trying to do stuff that I was always scared to do because of perception. Because at the end of the day, I'm afraid of perception, but life goes on. And as life goes on, I'm going to end up being only mad at myself because I imprison myself.
Exactly. And don't be that person that says... Don't be that person that doesn't know themselves and still sits there and says, I don't care what anyone says about. Because you know in the back of your mind that what they're saying may have even a percentage of truth in it. And that is the flaw of what the truth that you think that you're living. Is that, okay, well, I can say, you know what? You're a horrible person. And 98% of that may go in one ear and out the other. But that 2% is going to add up, because then the next person 2 months from now is still going to say you're a horrible person. And now that's 4%. And now every time someone tells you that you're a horrible person, it's going to stack up and stack up and stack up. And eventually you're going to look in the mirror and ask yourself. And when you ask yourself, that's when you know you truly care. When you really look in the mirror and ask yourself that question of all the opinions and all the judgments and everything that people will spit your way, when you finally get in front of yourself and say, you know what, am I a horrible person? That's when you know you're not really living your truth. Because I can never look in the mirror and say, am I a horrible person? Because the mirror cannot show me a horrible person. I know who I am. And everyone's opinions don't gradually stack up with me. It's not a complaint. I don't have a complaint box in my life.
And I ain't gonna hold you, bro. That's real, bro. You really gotta be, and to know yourself, bro, you have to learn to be okay with no's.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times we try to avoid pain. The thing that causes most people pain is no, rejection, not things going your way. And the thing is, life will never 100% go your way. Part of that submission, relinquishing that control, is learning to be okay with no's. Because when you're okay with no's, then you're okay with speaking or even asking. Humility is asking a question. Pride is making absolute statements. Learn how to ask. And when you learn how to receive the no's, you're more open to even asking.
Mm-hmm.
Humble yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Just humble yourself, because all you're doing is making it more difficult on yourself, because when you're trying to control everything, you're going to strain yourself. A lot of the fatigue that people feel in this life is because of pride. And back to what we talked about in an old episode, what are your whys? Your whys. The reason why you want to be vulnerable. Ask just in order to know yourself, ask up the whys. Ask why you're not vulnerable. And I bet you tie it to an outcome. Because if I do this, I'm not going to receive this. If I do this, my feelings going to get hurt. It's okay to have your feelings hurt. If the Bible speaks about when bad things happen, look at it as a time for growth. You know what I'm saying? Like, your characters can be developed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times how we assess pain or view pain, I think those who are secure themselves, they look at pain as a lesson or redirection. But people, you have to get to a point where you know how to view pain.
Yeah, you definitely do. There's just many different ways to view it, but one of the best ways to view it is with less understanding and more gratitude. Some of the mindsets that we create to combat, obviously trying to really figure out ourselves, they're useful in a way. I can't sit here and say that all the tools that we try to use that don't fit the part that we're trying to fix, they're all unuseful, because sometimes having that mentality where you saying, you know what, I lived through it, it didn't kill me, I'm fine. It's that is a mentality that you want to hold on to, but for the right time though. Like, you don't want to prematurely continuously use that ideology, because then it starts to harm your growth as a person. Like, at some point you may really truly find yourself. You may truly know yourself. And then that's when you can try to use that card and say, you know what? I lived through it. It didn't kill me. I'm fine. But people use that as a coping mechanism for every single small or big issue or problem in their life. And that's when you're like, okay, well, you're really misusing this tool wrong. All tools aren't bad tools. Some coping mechanisms are perfectly fine in this life.
But and I think when you said coping mechanisms, right, we have to, you know what I'm saying, really get onto that. Because a lot of people don't realize to cope, by definition, is to effectively deal with, right? A lot of people don't understand. A lot of things you're doing, you're not coping. You're distracting yourself. Mm-hmm. It's a vice. You're not coping. Mm-hmm. If I was to start boxing to deal with my frustration, right, and it helps me not have outbursts, that's coping. You know what I'm saying? I'm taking my frustration out somewhere else. But if I'm getting high all the time to avoid all these feelings, that's escapism. That's you know what I'm saying? That's a vice. That's not me coping with the issue. If the problem still persists, if I'm still complaining about the same issue 3 years from now, but I have a coping mechanism, then I'm not coping. And I think a lot of people got to realize what am I doing? I don't think a lot of people realize what they're doing.
No, they don't.
They believe they're doing something, but like I said, a lot of stuff has ways of hiding itself. What are you actually doing? Like, think about this. Do you enjoy most of the stuff you think you're doing, or are you really just conditioned to believe that? Or is it's advice? Like, people go out every weekend, they club, drink, smoke, and if that's what you like to do, I'm not judging. Like, there's nothing wrong with like a nice, martini or nothing. No, but why are you doing it? Because you say to do it, I'm outside, da da da. But are you just trying to avoid your problems? Because at the end of the day, you could get drunk, do all that stuff. You can club, you can do whatever you want. But in reality, you're just putting yourself in a deeper hole, because it's been a month now, you done spent about $300, $400 doing all that stuff. And that same insecurity you're still dealing with, that same problem or trauma you're still dealing with, because you think you use it to cope. You're not coping.
No.
That's escapism. You got to actually deal with your problem. And to deal with your problem, first thing we said earlier, you have to sit still. You can't always hang out with your friends. You can't always be around people. You can't keep using vices as a means to cope, because you're not coping. You're distracting yourself. What are you doing with the time that you want to build and work on yourself? Because you can't work on yourself if you're always surrounded by something. Mm-hmm. When you're at work, you can't be on your phone all the time. You can't do certain stuff, because in order to do a good job or to really get to the task at hand, you have to have focus, and you can't focus with all these distractions. A lot of people aren't actually coping.
It's not possible. The environment. If the environment isn't growth worthy, you're never gonna grow in it. And don't get me wrong, I completely understand why everyone loves to have fun, why
It's
everyone
cool.
loves
That's
to
wrong with
go
fun.
out.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that, right? But my problem within that comes, okay, when you're a knowledgeable man and when you are emotional, intelligible man, you will come across women in this life that unfortunately aren't on that level you are, right? And you have to be able to acknowledge that and allow that woman to go somewhere else. If you're the type of guy that never redirects a woman from your path of life, and you continue to accept every single thing that comes your way, then you're easily distracted to me, right? Because when you truly know who you are, there will be certain things that you're saying not,
It's not good for
you're
me.
not ready. You're not ready. You're not. It's not for me. Like that's one of the biggest keys on really being who you are. Is telling yourself it's not for me. And I feel like a lot of people don't get to that point because they're continuously distracted. And when you're continuously distracted, you never have the ability or the just the even mindset to tell yourself like that's not for me. Like it's truly things in this lifetime that I continuously tell myself. If you don't do drugs, then you tell yourself drugs aren't for you.
Yeah.
And if you do certain drugs, you tell yourself other certain drugs aren't for you. And when you start to cross those lines and you start to break those promises to yourself and saying something's not for you, then you're easily distracted. And unfortunately, I feel like within life, some of us have all been at a point where we can be distracted. But to be easily distracted means you don't focus on yourself, not even a little bit.
He's talking about me because I ain't gonna lie, I to that point where I've been working on that. Like I ain't gonna sit here and lie. Like me being vulnerable. Like yeah, like I realized that like I wasn't working on it, but that's something that a lot of stuff, and this including myself. I'm no better than anybody. Like a lot of stuff you might think you're coping, and really just like I'm really speaking about myself when I'm talking to y'all. Like it's me being real honest with y'all. Like
Yeah.
you have to be okay with not being distracted. Because a lot of things we do, we don't realize it's a gray area, and you're always masking it, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't realize it. And that's why, like a lot of, first of all, vulnerability with self. You have to be honest with yourself. Like, you know what? What am I really doing? What is this for?
Have to step back. You have to step back and ask
Step
those
back and
questions.
assess yourself.
Yeah, yeah. You have to ask yourself questions, but you
You gotta.
can't do that.
People don't, and I think that's the problem. You have to be okay with no's, but also asking questions. But a lot of people don't have the answer, so they don't ask.
Nope.
And I think the problem is the need to have a response. I think it's okay when you don't have the answers to take some time to think and process it. But a lot of people, when this is a pride thing, don't have the humility to step back and be like, I don't know right now. Or even to say it to themselves. Like, I can ask myself a question like, why am I doing this? And if I don't have an initial answer, I'm just going to distract myself because I don't want to deal with it. No. If I don't have the answer, take a step back and really think. Really think about those thoughts and ask myself those questions. Like, you have to humble yourself. Ask those questions, bro. Like, humility. But I think the third step, because we said, you know what I'm saying, know yourself or figure out who you are. And knowing yourself means where you want to be. Know yourself, surrender. And I think the third thing you have to do, bro, as simple as it sounds, jump. Just do it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, you
can't
have
do
to clear that gap.
application. Like, you can't do anything. You can never leave the house till you take the first step out the door.
Because initially, right, and I love the fact that you said jump, because initially those first two steps require one thing: isolation. And when you isolate yourself, you have to jump, you have to take a path. There's
Yeah.
somewhere you have to go after isolation because you're alone. You're by yourself. You're on this island. You're stranded, surrounded by absolutely nothing. So then once you finally got the right mindset and your heart is set in the right place and you're ready to travel somewhere positive and fulfilling and promising, and you're ready to have a true journey in life, that's where the jump comes in right then and there. Because
Yeah.
if you don't, and if you're afraid to jump, then that means you need to isolate some more.
But even then, even if you are afraid to jump, because even vulnerability at first is always intimidating, but you can never get used to something until you start it. You can never build, you know what I'm saying, the discipline to keep doing something until you first start.
Mm-hmm.
And so, even if you fall flat on your face, which we said, like, you have to be okay with pain. So even if you're vulnerable and it results in you getting your heart broken, you get your feelings hurt, remember, assess it again. Nothing wrong with you. Get back out there and keep jumping. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, Us being vulnerable is not tied to outcome. It's just us being who we are and freeing ourselves to be ourselves.
Yeah.
You being vulnerable shouldn't be tied to that girl saying yes to going on a date. Shouldn't be tied into, oh, this person, maybe they never change. You being vulnerable shouldn't be tied into receiving this job. You being vulnerable shouldn't be tied into you being accepted by this clique. No, it's so you can be yourself. 100% be yourself.
Yeah.
It's not for others. It's for yourself, and it's so you can actually live in your truth and not be a character. 'Cause a lot of people in their lives, you're wearing a mask. You are a character.
Definitely.
Take the mask off.
I gotta go back to what I said in the beginning as far as
Go
just
ahead.
being grateful that I even had somebody to start to like, because when I tell you it would have been that much harder to do it alone. Like I don't know if finding somebody in your life that maybe it's not even the person closest to you. That's the craziest part about it. Maybe it's the most cautious person near you. Maybe it's the most curious person near you
Word.
that is ready for that journey, that just needs that and you guys have to push each other and feed off each other's energy to want to be better in life and do better in life, because I was blessed to have Nick right there in my life. So then that way it made it even that much easier, because we would sit down and we would conversate and talk about certain things that I never even spoke about to anyone in life for the most part. So just having that person that and Nick was not in my close circle doing this. Nick was a person that I met off playing video games with.
PS4.
So the simple fact that we could sit there and we could commute about these things as if we were playing the game but weren't even playing the game, just talking, like it made that process for us that much easier. Sure, we had to do our own single isolations and we had to do our own reflections of who we are, but even sometimes saying like, bro, I found this out about myself, or just saying like, yeah, like I think this is really like my identity, or getting someone else's input that won't judge you, that wants to see you grow. That is the person that you if you have the ability to attach yourself to and say, let's figure this out, like brothers in arms. And this is why whenever I speak to Nick over the phone, I call him brethren, because like that is essentially what he is to me.
Shalom.
Yeah, that's essentially what he is to me. And that just lets you know that like, and I don't know if it's possible for it to be opposite sex, male, female, do this in a relationship. I don't know that. I just know that
it is.
yeah, it could, it very well may could be. I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying the person that you choose has to have the same desire. They have to have the same. It may not even be the same goal, but it's about where their heart will lie and about how conscious they are. Yeah, like their mind has to be on it. Everything has to pretty much match the same wavelengths for y'all to even for
Be
y'all to
equally
be
yoked.
like, yes. It has to all conjoin evenly.
Facts. Yeah. And I think, saying God will provide people environment. 'Cause, Adam, it's not good for man to be alone. Adam was given Eve. I think it's in order for you to grow, you need healthy relationships. And I think, and it talks about vulnerability. Relationships should be safe spaces for failure. And I think that applies with vulnerability. Safe spaces for failure. Safe spaces for changing of your mind. Safe spaces for, coming up short. Same safe spaces for just not being able to be present at times. And I think in having that community, it will help your walk with vulnerability. But, free yourself, Fantasia. But this was a good episode.
For sure.
Love y'all. Man, it's okay.
Yeah.
No judgment, bro. It's all love.
Man, it's always a pleasure to be here, and it's always love with my brother Nick, man. It's
Yes,
always
sir.
love.
But this is Becoming Shameless Podcast. Till next time.